Okay, so this is going to be a basic leg setup, and I'm going to go off of the curvature of the legs here based off of this model that one of my students had. So I'm going to go ahead and first off make a layer for this. So I'll come select this geometry, come to the side here, click on this icon that's creating a new layer from selected objects, and I'll double click this and I'll call it geometry or geo or geometry, something that lets me know that's the geometry layer. It's always good to have one for the skeleton as well, so I'll select the joints, come over here to the display layers, and this time I'll go to the layers down to create layers from selected. It's the same thing, it's just going through the menu set, and double click that, and tell this to be the skeleton, and I'll hit OK. I'm not going to use any color coding systems right here. I could click on any one of these and then it would show them in that color when they belong to a certain layer, but I'm just going to hit save. Okay, so to create the leg, I am going to pop out of the perspective view and pop into the side view like this. Okay. And the units are very large on this. I mean, the units itself in Maya are really tiny, but the character itself is very large. So it's probably set to centimeters in the character's um, actual size. So we could really just turn this off. So I can go to display down to grid. You'll see that it was already off. That's a common thing in Maya that it just automatically turns it on. So I'll do display grid again. That'll hide it. And in my side view, I can draw perfectly. So I will come up here, drop this down, go to my animation menu set. Again, that's F2 on your keyboard if you want to hit F2. And I'm going to go up to skeleton, down to my joint tool. And I'll just kind of draw from the hips. So I'll decide where this thing is going to maybe rotate from. And I can click and draw, and you guys are going to see that wherever I'm drawing from, it's not going to update a view for me to see the joint because the joint is inside the geometry. And what I need to do is I need to come over here to shading, click on that and go down to X-ray joints. And that's going to allow me to see it. I am still in the drawing mode, so I can actually hold down my middle mouse button. And that would allow me to, click and move this thing around wherever I may need it. So I'm going to kind of put it here towards the center just for now. And I'm still in the joint drawing tool, so I don't need to go back up to skeleton down to joint tool. I'm still in it. I'm still in drawing mode. What I like to do here is I'll just kind of come and I'll click and drag. I could drag even a little bit forward if I needed to for this to bend, but I do want a bit of a bend in these legs. Now the legs are almost kind of straight-ish, if you will. They're a little bit strange, so I'll kind of go forward with it a little bit. I could place this afterwards, it's not a big deal. But I'll click and drag this way. I do want a bit of a bend, so I'll kind of come this way with it. If I'm not getting enough of a bend here, because it's a little more common to put a bend, I can use my pick arrows. So I'll pick walk by tapping the up arrow on my keyboard, and I could drag this by holding down my middle mouse button. It allowed me to move this while I'm still drawing it out. Okay, so I could drag it forward a little bit, and something like that would not hurt anything at all because really these are going to go off of the orientation of this joint. Okay, now I could just put it there if I'm more comfortable with it there, and I could tap the down arrow to jump to this guy and put this one a little bit back. But really, I'll just average it between these two. So I'll put this one towards the back end of where this thing is going to rotate, and I'll come up here, use the up arrow key, and then I'll hold down my middle mouse button, and I'll just kind of get that to get a little bit of a bend. I really could go up to the top one too, hold down my middle mouse button. I could bring it back a little bit to exaggerate that bend a tiny bit. And then it would give me a little leeway to have this placed a little bit better. Okay, so I go from there down to the ankle over to the ball of my foot. So if I want this thing to bend right about there-ish to runner's pose or something like that, and I'll hold shift and I can click, and shift allows me to constrain it to go straight out, and I can just kind of drag it to where it maybe interpenetrates the geometry a little bit right there. And that looks pretty good. It can be on the outside, that's not going to hurt anything at all. So that's pretty good for the leg setup. I'll hit enter to commit to that. And then the placement is going to occur now. So what I'll do is just hit the space bar to jump out of there. And I'll jump into the front view for now. And really what I have to do for each one of these, I have to go to shading down to X-ray joints to be able to see through into my joint chain through my geometry. So I'll use my move tool now. So either hit W on your keyboard or click on this guy here, and I'll drag this thing over about there. And characters that have a little bit more spread like this, we're able to move only the root joint. So for the whole system, the root joint would be the hips right here, or the top of the leg. And in certain cases, it may be labeled that, either hips, or you might label it left up leg to stay with the Autodesk naming convention. And that's okay. But that's the only one that we're going to move. Same thing with the arm when you're creating the arm. And the reason being is that we need this to be planar, so we need this to be straight. Okay, they all need to be aligned. The same thing is going to go with rotating. So if I rotate this, I can get it to into place a little bit better. Okay, so something like that is getting close to where this is getting more centered with the foot, and that's something that we would try to achieve. Don't want to bend the knee, all strange like that wouldn't really work too well for us. Instead, we could move, well, for this character that is, we could move this, out this way a little bit more. And in this front view, I could really just take the box and move it. So I could move this towards the outer part of the hips a little bit more. And then you see that I can actually start rotating this in a little bit. So I could put it towards the edge there and then use my rotate tool, which is E, the hotkey, E, and just kind of get this to be somewhere close to centered. And you see how I'm having a hard time sometimes getting a little bit more precise. I'll use the plus or minus key on my keyboard to make this larger or smaller. And if I make it larger, I can drag this in smaller increments and I can get that lined up a little bit better, a little bit more easily. So I'll hit the minus key now to make my tool smaller so it's not so obnoxiously large and getting in the way when I'm working with this stuff. That looks like it's going to be lined up pretty nicely. It should get us what we need to get done with this character, and everything's planar, okay? I also want to pay attention, and I could do that in my perspective view, and I could also do it in my top view, but actually it looks pretty decent to where I wouldn't have to rotate this like in the x-axis to align it. I mean, I guess I could a little bit. Pay attention to where the tip of this geometry is, only because it's really kind of pointy right there, you know, have it lined up there. That would be acceptable for the movement of this character just based off of the way that they modeled it. And again, you would want to model for animation, so if you're not familiar with that, I would definitely look into getting the edge loops and everything pretty nice for animation, okay? So that's the main basis for the leg. We're only going to worry about the left leg because we can mirror over the left leg to the right leg and be happy with that, okay? And everything will fall into place just nicely. And that's mainly because this is a symmetrical character, same on both sides basically, okay? So to work with this, I am going to take this, and with that root selected, I'll hit Q on my keyboard just to make sure that I'm in my selection tool right here. And Q allows me to only select and I don't accidentally move things. I'll go up to the top here, and I'm either going to click on this icon right here to go to component mode, or you'll see that I can hit F8 to go to component mode. So I'll click on this icon or hit F8. And if you do not have this turned on, this miscellaneous component, which is the question mark, we have to click it to turn it on, and that'll view or allow us to see our miscellaneous components. And now we can see the different orientation of these joints, okay? So what should be, or what we're going for, now I'll come down here and I'll click on V for my geometry to hide my geometry, is that X should be pointing to the child, and that's just the way that we're doing things in class. X points to the child, so this X is pointed there, there, and there, and any end X joint, like this one, we're going to rotate this, and I'll hit E to evoke my rotate tool, and I do drag marquee around those because it's easier to select them. We're going to rotate this thing to point at a fictitious child out here. So if there was another joint out here, basically, I'll hold down J key to use the snapping function and just kind of click and drag this. And I'm stuck in this weird transformation, so I must not have grabbed the handle very nicely. So hold down J, click on this handle and drag, and you're seeing that it's snapping now. And that's the desired effect. Okay, so this is pointing to a fictitious child out that way, which that's pretty good. I'm going to go and take my Z's, and I want all my Z's pointing away from the body in this case. So anything vertical, like a leg or the spine, the Z should be pointing to the left away from the body. So to show you, I can select multiple ones as well. So select that one, shift select this one, and one at the bottom is different. So I'll take these two. I'll use the same hotkey, the J key, and click and drag those to snap them like that. And I want them to point outward, not at some funky angle, because this is going to be bent at the Z-axis. So that's going to get my walk cycles and all that good stuff in forward kinematics mode. Okay, so it's going to go like that. Oh, and inverse kinematics as well, because they're going to be based off of our orientation to begin with. Okay, Y we don't worry about, because once we align X and then Z, Y falls into place. Okay, so that makes life easy for us. We'll hold down J, kind of click this and drag it until I snap it. And this whole system is, I mean, the way that the character is angled, this might be good for us, the way that they're aligning, and see how they're kind of tilting upward, because the the character is kind of not really bow-legged, but the legs were spread a bit much for this, and that's okay. This could work for us, or we could try to maybe go like this in certain cases. Really, what works for you is and gets the character's movement across is going to be the correct way. Okay, but this is a good general rule of thumb, if you will, to get these to align a little bit better. So I'll hold down J again. It's my last one. Bam. Okay. So all of these are aligned and they're all set to proper orientation. So that looks really good. I'm going to go to the top here and I'm going to go back to object mode. I could hit F8 on my keyboard again, or just click this icon where my cursor is. And now I'm ready to go for the reverse foot setup. Okay, so that's just the basic leg setup. I'll stop this and I'll set this as its own tutorial. That way you can just jump to the next one, not have to worry about fast forwarding.